infrastructure, Mr. Speaker. However, we have to balance that with the well-being and the prosperity of the citizens. Infrastructure, and I state this for emphasis, infrastructure projects are important. I'll now deal with the security allocation. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2023 has allocated $58.6 billion for public safety and public security, an increase of $7.1 billion. In 2022, the government allocated $51.5 billion for public safety. What did we see? That is the big question. What did we see? What did we experience during this period? In the year 2022, the crime rate by country 2022 report submitted, and I will lay over these reports that I'm citing, Mr. Speaker, that Guyana has the 8th highest crime rate worldwide of 68.7 and a murder rate of 4 times higher than that of the United States. This statistic is from an independent source and did not square with the numbers provided by the Guyana Police Force, who reported on themselves. Sir, I call on the Guyana Police Force to release the resources on data collection. How are these statistics compiled? What methods of sampling is being employed? Do these statistics consider that Guyanese hardly report incidents of crime to the police force? And we cannot, Mr. Speaker, trust this data because it flies in the face of what we experience every day. So, Mr. Speaker, if a $52.5 billion could not make us safe in 2022, it is safe to conclude that $58.6 billion cannot do the trick, with no plans to address these serious issues. Like most of you, I'm reading. And it is safe to conclude that money is not the problem. The problem lies in the lack of economic security, and it's something that you cannot comprehend, and the feeling of general insecurity in this country. Mr. Speaker, the problem is the compromising of the independence of the Guyana Police Force. The World Bank report has reported that Guyana's poverty rate is among highest in Latin America and that of the Caribbean. The IDB has noted that Guyanese live on less than $5. Mr. Speaker, in this sad economic context, any strategy to address public security must rest on targeted poverty reduction programs. So, Mr. Speaker, I refer the members on that side of the House who are clearly at a loss with what I'm talking about to the manifesto of the APNU-AFC. And I know this is a high level of information for you to comprehend, but read page 24. Page 24 is very instructive. Our policy on public security is premised on the consideration of promoting our people's safety. We tie public security to the economic security of our citizens. It is simple. It is simple. If a man cannot find food, he is likely to become a perpetrator of crime. I now turn to the Guyana Police Force, Mr. Speaker. Between the years 2015 to 2020, the coalition government worked assiduously to professionalize the Guyana Police Force. And on August 31st, 2018, President Granger appointed a substantive commissioner of police, one deputy commissioner for administration, one for administration, one for law enforcement, and one for intelligence. And at the ceremony at State House, the head of state declared, and I quote, "Office of Commissioner of Police is not a toy, a trinket, or a tool of political favor or patronage." This declaration, Mr. Speaker, articulated a policy that established a clear constitutional distinction between the Police Directorate and the Guyana Police Force. It reinforces the view the police force must be independent. Mr. Speaker, at that moment, we proceeded on the path of a professionalized police force that has gained the trust and the confidence of the public. And after years, sir, after years on the vice grips of phantoms, ghosts, and the drug underworld, the Guyana police force was returned to some semblance of normalcy. The Police Act is very clear. The force is charged with the prevention and the detection of crime. And I know some of you on the other side of the house would want me to elaborate because it's very hard for you to comprehend. But time will not permit me to do that. But what I'll say, Mr. Speaker, is that the hearts of the past and current officers bleed for the Guyana Police Force. Incident after incident, the credibility of the force is being called into question. A few in the leadership structure are under the thumb of the political directorate. The men and women under this leadership cannot speak, and they cower in fear. And this is the reality. This is your legacy. Added to this, they are being instructed to make themselves tools of government propaganda. Sir, and these are not strictly the lamentations of the opposition. It is the people of Guyana who are complaining about this. The U.S. State Department, in its report 2021 Country Reports on Human Rights Practices, Guyana complained that, and I quote, there were reliable reports that members of the security forces committed abuses. Significant human rights issues included credible reports of unlawful or arbitrary killings, including extrajudicial killings, unquote. And I'll submit all of these reports, Mr. Speaker, and I'll say to my colleague that many of your police officers, they are quietly complaining. But I say, like I've said before, to the men and women, I say to you, be professional, hold the strain, we will be back. In the context of the new oil and gas context, where there is economic and as envisioned by the Constitution. Regrettably, Mr. Speaker, I see nothing in this budget that remotely seeks to address these issues. What are your plans, Honorable Minister, besides holding your head to overhaul the police force? How will you strengthen investigative capacity? Is it your long-term plan to always resort to RSS? It must be recalled that under our tenure, there was investigative capacity that was improved by the police force. But we are now back, Mr. Speaker, to being incapable to solve serious crimes. And Mr. Speaker, this is nothing but a sad, sad state of affairs. I'll now turn briefly to the Guyana Fire Service. Mr. Speaker, if there is ever a need to point to the particular area on the Ministry of Home Affairs that reflects the certainty to absolute incompetence, it's the issue of the constant fires. Never in the history of this country we have seen this development. Something is terribly wrong, and there are a lot of conspiracy theories abound. However, Mr. Speaker, I will not venture to engage in these conspiracy theories to besmirch the good reputation of this chamber. I will, however, venture to show a direct link between the incompetence at Breakdown and the inefficiency of the Guyana Fire Service. Sir, allow me to be clear. They are professional men and women who can get the job done in the system. I have researched this issue, Mr. Speaker, and I've spoken to those who are involved. They are demoralized due to the constant political interference and the lack of a system based on merit. Hardworking and bright young people at the Guyana Fire Service are being pushed to the side and overlooked because they refuse to kiss the ministerial ring. Mr. Speaker, you will recall the issue of the promotion list. You will recall the extension of the contract of someone in leadership who should have been pastured a long time ago. A long time ago, not only because of age, but due to statutory requirements. Sir, the proper management of a ministry does not lie with the ability to be present at every fire and watch the manifestation of your incompetence as you drip in sweat. It lies in the ability to let the system work and absolutely stop the micromanagement. Let the professionals do their work. Clearly, Mr. Speaker, our schools are now a target for arsonists. So the incompetence is having real and far-reaching
consequences for us. Sir, in any country of any consequences, the minister would have been sent home a long time ago. It lies in the ability to let the system work. And I say let the system work and stop the micromanaging. Let the professionals do their work. It's what they're trained to do. So, Mr. Speaker, the 2.7 billion which allocated to the Guyana Fire Service in 2022 produced more fire. There's no reason to believe that the 545 million, the 489 million, and the 20 million allocated in 2023 will make any difference. You cannot continue to throw money at incompetence. It will make no difference. It is insanity, absolute insanity. The budget needs to include allocation to send the leadership at breakdown packing. That is the only way to prove it's efficacious. Sir, I'll now briefly turn to immigration and passports. Mr. Speaker, I wish to repeat that Guyana's biggest public security trend remains the issues of economic insecurity. We cannot construct good public security in a nation where a large section of the population feels as if they do not have access to the resources. We cannot talk about public security without addressing the insecurities being felt. So, sir, in that context, we must examine the issue of immigration in the oil-producing Republic of Guyana. National Security Advisor has informed the nation that there are 60,000 Venezuelans currently residing in Guyana. The migration policy has reported that the number of Caribbean nationals entering Guyana has doubled. These statistics and these reports that I'm quoting from will be laid over. And added to this revelation, sir, Guyanese are reporting that they are encountering nationalities from across the globe. And sir, I have no arguments with this. This is understandable, and I don't understand the need for heckling. This will occur because we are being touted as the fastest growing economy in the world. But sir, we on this side of the house, we are cognizant of the fact that we need at least 160,000 workers to reach our potential. This requires a comprehensive immigration policy. So there is immense uncertainty about who has arrived in the land of El Dorado. These numbers are frightening implications for security. There's nothing in this budget, sir, that seeks to ascertain the following. How many foreign nationals are here? How many jobs have been acquired? How many systems are in place to ensure that the nation's national security is not being compromised? What systems are in place to ensure that Guyanese are given the first option for job opportunities? Mr. Speaker, it is a known fact that Guyana possesses a relatively small population in the context of oil and gas, and we need to source special skills from other places. But the lack of transparency and the lack of a clear and consistent policy by this government have the nation worried. And we need to know, and these are reasonable questions, sir. We need to know, and the people need to know, what category of skills do we require at this juncture? Which foreign nationals have we identified to plug those gaps? How does the policy align with the Citizenship Act, the Immigration Act, and the Constitution in general? Budget 2023 should have included a sizable sum for the Bureau of Statistics to embark on data collection to ascertain what is happening with the immigration policy of the country. Sir, the Migration Policy Institute has cautioned that the discovery of oil will lead to an influx of workers. Even though this is needed, we must ensure that Guyanese workers are our #1 priority. And those who are heckling cannot argue that this is an unreasonable request. It is a reasonable request. I now turn briefly, sir, to governance. Every week, the APNU AFC government, we have reported to the Guyanese people on the decisions of cabinet. We reported on contracts and so many more details. Today, there is a complete blackout on information. Members of civil society are writing countless letters to the Minister of Information to get the details on how contracts are awarded. But, sir, there's little success. The government refuses to be transparent. Sir, we all know that good government demands at minimum the availability of information to the people. Nobody knows what are contained in secret contracts that will impact Guyanese for generations. Sir, there's no information available on the large mining contracts. The government refuses to tell us what concessions have been made on behalf of the Guyanese people. Sir, Budget 2023 is being presented in the government context, where the government is openly flouting, and I say this to my colleague, the extractive industry's transparency initiative standards. This has resulted in the EITI reporting on its board's decision to accord a fairly low score to Guyana. Mr. Speaker, all of this poor governance is coupled with the government's lack of interest in listening to the pleas of civil society. In this regard, sir, the government appears to be engineering a plastic civil society that will remain at its beckon and its call. The government, sir, has moved to question the membership and the leadership of civil society groups that provide constructive critique on their programs and their policies. Members of these organizations are being placed on blacklists and ostracized by the government. So, Mr. Speaker, I take no pleasure in reporting that the fear is real. In my efforts to prepare for this presentation, I made contact with a few members of civil society to get a better understanding of their struggles and what they were facing. And I was told in no uncertain terms, with almost gripping hands, not to reveal the names with whom I've spoken with. The fear of retribution from this government is real, Mr. Speaker. And the government policy of government appears to be, you will have your say, but we will have our way. So, Mr. Speaker, in closing, I wish to re-emphasize that this 781.9 billion budget will amount to nothing if there is no attempt to ensure economic security for the Guyanese people. And this is a real concern, sir. It cannot be taken lightly. It cannot be taken lightly. You have to measure all these measures that you're placing in the budget to ensure that there is economic security for the less vulnerable. So, Mr. Speaker, we have seen for the last 3 years what destructive government looks like and how it can negatively impact our lives. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a deception in 2023 budget, and this is a deception that has become the hallmark of the PPPC. But in closing, I wish to say that there are certain aspects of the budgets where there are positives, infrastructure, there's some sort of benefits for the people, and I have no qualms about that. But I say you have to balance that. You have to absolutely balance that. If you cannot balance that, I will have a difficulty in supporting this budget. And when I speak, this is not my personal view, this is not the view of the opposition, but this is the view of the persons that I've encountered. And I traverse 4, 5, and 6, and this is the view of those people. So when I stand here, this is not a representation of me as a member of the opposition, but this is a representation of the views of those that I represent in 4, 5, and 6. So in closing, Mr. Speaker, I will say that this is a deception that we have seen in the continuous budgets presented by the PPPC, and this has become the deception of the People's Progressive Party. But there are certain aspects, but at this point, I cannot render any sort of support to the budget. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And now for the Honorable Member, Dr. Vindhya Prasad, Minister of Social Services.
It's interesting how my colleague, Minister Rosen-Ben, was the center of attention just now. Mr. Speaker, as I add my support to my colleagues in commending Budget 2023, I do so very conscious of the efforts that have been expended by Guyanese across sectors in ministries, giving their input to a budget that is transformational, a budget that is cross-cutting, a budget that is integrated, and a budget that focuses on every aspect of human development and country development comprehensively. As I thank all of those members of staff across ministries, I must recognize the astute leadership of my colleague, Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh and his team from the Ministry of Finance in crafting what is the biggest budget that we've seen to date. This budget is one that offers much to many, but I will focus on the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security and give you insight into work that has been done, work that is planned, and work that I'm sure that will have an impact on the lives of the most vulnerable and populations that will definitely understand how this budget will impact them, because like last year, they will live it this year and feel the impact on their lives. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that this budget is something that my colleagues on the other side should support. Wouldn't you want to support the government's efforts towards children, education for children, the efforts of the government towards keeping children safe, the efforts of government towards providing for children with disability, the efforts of government for providing solutions for mothers who would want to leave their children in safe and secure places? Mr. Speaker, that is the legacy of the People's Progressive Party civic government in catering for children across the length and breadth of this country. Children who depend on parents, and as such, there is much in this budget for families across the country. As a government, we believe in the stability of families. We believe in community development. We believe in infrastructural development. We're not a government that is impervious to the global crises that is affecting every country in this world. We're not a government that is oblivious to the trends in the world that would have had an impact on so many different aspects of governance and the way people govern. In fact, we have offered as a government tangible solutions to the challenges to food security, making Guyana pivotal in CARICOM, the voice of CARICOM, providing the solutions that CARICOM is following, the region is looking at, the world is looking at in terms of fighting the global crises. Mr. Speaker, we in this National Assembly should not resort to the usual broken narrative of divisiveness and polarization. This is a country that wants unity. This is a country that demands inclusivity. And this is a country that I am very proud of, where our people would like to benefit from what we as a government would have managed to do in just 2 years. Mr. Speaker, if I am to look at what the world says about gender equality, I can quote from a report from the World Economic Forum report. This report is usually presented annually and was first presented in 2006 and speaks to the global gender equality gap insight report. And it's an important thing because, Mr. Speaker, one of the key indicators is economic participation and opportunity. And this is very important because it speaks to what I've been listening to being questioned. This is not Guyana government doing it. This is the World Economic Forum. And in just 1 year, last year, 2022, Guyana traversed 18 spots up from place number 53 to 35. And there have been numerous indicators. And I'm only speaking of what is relevant to my sector. However, if we're to look at many of the other sectors, we could have seen that the contributions of programs that transform the employment prospects of people across the country would have been recognized in moving us 18 spots up. For example, we can speak of Goal, Grow, Win, BIT, just to name a few of those programs that do not come with a price tag. They come absolutely free. They're accessible to all the people of Guyana. You know, one of the members on that side of the house, I believe it was the Honorable Member, Mr. Royce Ford, who spoke about government boots being on the neck of people. They were on the neck of people in 5 years with a taxation-existent budget. Budgets that were crafted on the taxes on the backs of people. Mr. Speaker, this is a budget that does not give any new taxes to the people. None at all. In fact, the income tax threshold has been increased so that people are able to have in their pockets $3 billion and 12,000 people are not in the tax net anymore. That is the level of the kind of development, the kind of governance, and the kind of input that we want to have on the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, I will be happy to provide this report to you. In fact, in education attainment, Guyana ranks first globally, tying with 21 other countries such as Canada, Brazil, the Netherlands, and Jamaica, which is the only other Caribbean country in first place. Read it. Guyana has also tied for first place in ranking for enrollment in both secondary and tertiary education. This is especially important as it clearly indicates the outcomes and long-term impact of projects implemented by the government. I continue. The construction of schools and provision of human and other resources in Amerindian communities throughout the interior regions of Guyana has made educational accessible and attainable even during periods where Guyana has had limited fiscal capacity. This is an expansive report, Mr. Speaker, and I'll be presenting it to you on conclusion of what I'm saying. Mr. Speaker, I believe that I'd like to ask my colleagues, my Guyanese brothers and sisters on the opposite side of the House to remove the myopic lens, to remove the obligatory mantle that they like to wear when it comes to causing division and rejecting progress and development. You know, it's a simple walk from over there to over here. And deep down, I know you want to do it. You're more than welcome. We embrace collaboration. We embrace your support. We embrace your working with us. Feel free to walk across the floor. It's as easy as that. Mr. Speaker, when we look at our country, no country is insulated from the world economy and the global crises. But we want to say that Guyana has managed to, in the shortest possible time, have the opportunity to transform the lives of women and men across the country, a program that I'm immeasurably proud of, the Women's Innovation Investment Network Program, and there's nothing to compare it to in your 5 years because nothing existed. The WIN Initiative is a program that has produced 6,193 trained persons across every region in this country. In fact, just last year, we were able to provide free training with no prerequisite required for admission, and 4,033 women and men benefited from that training, which is free, which is offered in a hybrid model, and which allows them the potential of employment and starting a micro enterprise. Mr. Speaker, no amount of noise will dissuade me from presenting irrefutable facts that 6,193 people across this country have benefited. And this year, $100 million will ensure 6,000 more women and men benefiting this year alone. Mr. Speaker, I want to say it is not only training, but this is a comprehensive model of training, moving people into our Win in Business clinic, giving them business literacy training, moving them into the field of micro enterprise. On our sample of 2,339 of these persons who have been trained, we have 48% of them who would have developed business proposals and 25% of them who own a business. That is the level of progress that has happened in 1 year. For the first time in the region, for the first time in the Caribbean, and definitely for the first time in Guyana, we have an app that is called the Win app, where 750 women have the opportunity to advertise their business for free. Coming this year with a collaboration with MMG, these women will be in a position to offer their products for sale on this app. This is a beautiful blend of IT, entrepreneurship, and vision. Mr. Speaker, I would like to continue on Win and to say that there are so many projects that will result in people from the hinterland and across the coastland, in remote and rural areas who will benefit from that Win training. Those who've been trained in professional courses like elder care, child care, patient care, will now benefit from the opportunity, whether individually or in consortium, to be able to be referral points where patients from hospitals, people who would like to have access to caregivers who are trained, they can do this, utilizing those persons who have been trained through the WIN program. One of the novel initiatives that have been established, and this year will really speak to thousands of women who, when they saw this announced in the 2023 budget, they were ecstatic. And that was the establishment of day, night care, and early childhood development centers. This is a blended model, and this is the first of its kind in the region, definitely in the Caribbean, and I can venture to say perhaps in the world. And I have recognized that women who work long hours, people who work long hours, parents, single parents, mothers and fathers who would like a safe space for their children to be kept while they're at work, they now will have the option, as this budget provides $100 million so that we can start construction of these day and night care and early childhood development centers. Mr. Speaker, this offers a sanctuary for children, and those persons who've been trained, not only are they trained in childcare, they will also receive training in special needs as well as early childhood, and this can be something that Guyana is very proud of. Mr. Speaker, as we continue to look at what was achieved and what is to be achieved, I think I cannot go forward without recognizing that the WIN program operates out of a building called the Guyana Women's Leadership Institute. This was a building that was in serious disrepair. Everything had grounded to a halt, and now that building is a thriving hub, completed with modern classrooms, a brand new computer lab, a Win in Business incubator, and will house the first of the day, night care, and early childhood development centers. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, we're adding to this because we understand that People, especially women, like to cook. Why not make it profitable? And so we will be putting out for those women an opportunity to have free training where they can, from this training, start their own businesses. A state-of-the-art culinary center will be launched in the first quarter of this month, and women across the country will have access to training at no cost to them. Mr. Speaker, and it's not just training. This training is certificate training done by the University of the West Indies, the UK ABMA, and through Coursera, offering those persons who come through the WIN program an opportunity of stackable courses, giving them a recognizable qualification that puts them on easy footing to further develop themselves in the technical vocational field, to have employment, or to start their own micro enterprise. Mr. Speaker, we have been in talks with a number of entities, the Private Sector Commission, GCCI, to ensure that these women have an entry into those places where ordinarily they never had such an opportunity. The fact that this speaks to women who have never before been in the world of business is a powerful message to all women in our country. This is empowerment. This is real empowerment. Nothing can be achieved without single-minded focus and hard work. And Mr. Speaker, I'm prepared to work hard. In fact, I am a hard worker. And I believe that I work with people who have similar vision with me to make these things materialize. In fact, if we looked at the first week of registration, over 7,000 people applied. We didn't only leave them like that. Over 3,000 women benefited from seed funding for their businesses through a collaboration with the World Food Program. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that mothers, the single parents that we consider, the single fathers, the single mothers, they will also benefit from subsidies which come out of the ministry that helps them with their child care costs. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the We Lift activity that is usually celebrated around International Women's Day has grown. From 75 women-owned businesses, we grew to 150 women-owned businesses under one roof, under the We Lift program. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Human Services, Gender Affairs Bureau continues to work with men and women across the country, developing women's groups, men's groups, and working to continue on the Shared Responsibilities campaign. We are now embarking on an exercise where we will be training a number of persons on gender, on shared responsibility, gender-based violence, and a number of other social issues, including coaches, taxi drivers, bartenders, to name a few of that. Our groups expand and extend throughout the length and breadth of Guyana, and work is expected to be complete on the national gender policy this year, 2023. Mr. Speaker, we have as a government always put emphasis on families, and as such our family enhancement unit will be expanded, and the excellent work that this unit has been doing in Region 4 will now move across to the various regions and will be in collaboration with our other programs so that holistically we can cater for the social issues that abound. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I have always believed that there is no need to say what people live. Work speaks for itself, and the work of the Ministry of Human Services is very visible for all of Guyana to see and to participate in. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the Child Care and Protection Agency, which is pivotal when it comes to the care of children, has been consistently working on developing a number of key areas that address child abuse. The Every Child Safe project speaks to community engagement and interaction in all of Guyana's regions, and a number of persons will benefit from training. We have produced a parenting manual and workbook, and there will be structured training for parents across this country. In addition to that, we have allowed children to express their voice as a part of us protecting child rights and giving children a platform on which they can share their experiences on safety and security. We have managed to produce a storybook where children would have shared their stories on safety and what it means to them. The Street Light Project, which falls under the Every Child Safe program, is a key project as it speaks to children who are on the streets. We have been effectively removing children from off the streets, working with their families, addressing socio-economic issues, and we have managed to remove at least 30 of those children from our streets. This program will intensify as we do not want to have any child on the street, and we must get to the source of why they're on the street, work with them and their families so there is not a recurrence. Mr. Speaker, the community approach that we are taking through the Child Care and Protection Agency is bound to yield results because we are not working in a vacuum or silo. We're also looking at those children who have special needs. This budget provides, as a promise from His Excellency, a fleet of 7 retrofitted vehicles that will help those children who are living with disabilities. And this takes me to the work of the Ministry on persons living with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, we have managed to help hundreds of persons across the length and breadth of Guyana, centrally from the Difficult Circumstances Unit and through our outreaches to have free access to support aids, assisted aids, wheelchairs, walkers, and so many more things. Mr. Speaker, the construction of the Learning Lab, a training complex for persons living with disabilities, will be open in the first quarter of this year, providing for the first time an empowerment entrepreneurship opportunity for persons living with disabilities. Last year, $100 million would have been budgeted. This year, we continue to focus on training. We continue to work with persons living with disabilities, and a revolving fund for persons living with disabilities can be accessed through the Small Business Bureau. So there is a comprehensive outlook to the kind of support and help that we are giving to the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, we have been working assiduously protecting child rights, and as such, we were able to ensure that legislation was passed in alignment with the Hague Convention on International Adoption, which is expected to commence this year. We've been working with the U.S. State Department and other state entities and other stakeholders to ensure that this happens. Our legislative agenda is a rich one. We have completed the counter trafficking in persons legislation, and that will be brought on the floors this year. We have other pieces of legislation to consider, to review, and to bring at some time to this House, including the Domestic Violence Act, which will incorporate new forms of family violence, the Harassment Act, which I'm sure some of you will be very wary of having, but that will be happening. We'll be looking at the pension and the Poor Relief Act, which are archaic pieces of legislation. Mr. Speaker, I want to say thank you to the international community that would have not only been very supportive, but would have recognized the sterling work done by the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security. These last 2 years, we would have spent looking at a number of the homes and some of the establishments that focus on the elders, on children, and on persons living with disabilities. Last year, a beautiful new kitchen and recreation center was opened at the Sophia Drop-In Center, much to the delight of hundreds of children, modern and beautiful. What they cooked in and what they ate in was akin to a shack. It was appalling and horrible. I want to say also that this year, that center will receive a much-needed facelift. We're also looking at the expansion of our shelters. We're also looking at shelters for domestic violence and trafficking in persons. And we're also looking at the residential care facility for children living with disabilities, and they will have a brand new facility. All of these will be enclosed in the Mahaika complex. Mr. Speaker, the more noise you make, it gives me the impetus to continue. Mr. Speaker, parents who have children living with disability will continue to benefit through the work of the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security and through the budget to the tune of $40.4 billion. Mr. Speaker, our pensioners would have received an increase which totals to 67% over just 2 years. Now moving to this budget, and this is in comparison to less than 30% of the 5-year period of the APNU AFC government. I will not stand here and say that is the be-all and the end-all of pension, but there's a tangential increase that is planned, and pensioners will not only benefit from the increase to $33,000 and of interest, the life expectancy is increasing because we have seen from 2020 to 2023, we started with just about 60,000 pensioners. Now we are projecting 73,000 pensioners, which means we are also helping those persons to have access to their source documents so that they can access their pension. We have also transformed the delivery system of pension, creating a shut-in delivery system, a direct delivery system, alternate venues so the post offices are not crowded. We're adding to this MMG very soon, and pensioners would have more than 1,000 new locations to access their pension. Mr. Speaker, and it's not only the pension, it's the water subsidy that you took away. That you also raised taxes on.
Be careful, Honorable Member. I didn't take away anything.
The honorable members removed. Also, Mr. Speaker, we're looking at public assistance spiraling to 29,000 recipients. And this is remarkable. And this has happened because of a decision made by this government when just about 5,000 children received $100,000 cash grant towards their permanent disability. All those children are now moved to the permanent register of public assistance, which means that a significant number of that 29,000 is comprised of children and adults living with permanent disabilities. A policy change also resulted now in persons with permanent disabilities not having to apply and reapply. They can now access the public assistance more effortlessly, if I put it that way. We are creating a disability unit at the ministry that is geared for the first time ever in Guyana, a whole unit for persons living with disability, focused on their assistance, focused on supportive and assistive aids, focused on training, and focused on every single need that would arise for persons living with disabilities. In order to structure and streamline the efficiency and efficacy of our ministry, there is also going to be a senior citizens unit to focus on all of the elders and the seniors as we value their contributions, and we would like to ensure that whatever is within our power, we can provide to them so they can have a better quality of life. Mr. Speaker, the ministry's iCare program. This was a new program, and this program was able to offer to persons just in 2022, 1,230 persons free tested spectacles. Mr. Speaker, we went to communities that never had this kind of access before, including Mocha, Philippi, to name a few. And I can give you the list of all the communities so that you can hear. Baramita, Tushan, Manripo, Bartika, Yupakari, Kumaka, Camarang, Kato, Shelton, Anai, Kwakwani, St. Cuthberts, Wakenham, Susanna's Ross, just to name some of them. Mr. Speaker, last year we were able to do just over 1,000 spectacles as well, and this is a program that we have seen make a difference in the lives of people, whether it's their education as children or pensioners whose face light up because they're able to now read their books. This is a very, very helpful program. Mr. Speaker, through the Difficult Circumstances Unit, we have also helped with home rehabilitation for pensioners and persons living with disability and single parents, and we continue to offer assistance in other areas. Mr. Speaker,
Thank you, Honorable Member. I'll assist you with an extension if I get a movement.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask that my colleague be given time to continue. I know she has a very large sector and would love to have lots of time.
Honorable Minister, you have 5 minutes to conclude. Thank you very much.
thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The night shelter is a facility that has undergone, I would say, complete renovation from looking like what I call the chicken coop when I came into this ministry. It is now a place that provides a dignified environment for people who are homeless, people who are indigent, and people who require shelter and a hot meal. This year, the night shelter will also benefit from a kitchen. And for those of you who even deign to look at people on the street, we are not only looking at them on the street, we are removing them from the streets through our help program, and we are ensuring that they're well taken care of. We have excellent collaborations with the Mental Health Unit of the Ministry of Health and the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation to ensure that they are well taken care of. Mrs. Veersamy, good work as the administrator. Mr. Speaker, in addition to what has been happening at the night shelter, those persons who have been removed from the streets and are able-bodied will, through a collaboration between the Ministry of Labor and Human Services, I spoke to my colleague, will be introduced a bit so that they can be trained in technical vocational skills and have the opportunity to get back into the world of work. Mr. Speaker, I want to just conclude with something that has always troubled me, and that is gender-based violence. This ministry has received commendation from the UNFPA this year for the work that it has done in conjunction with Spotlight. And I will just read a few excerpts. You know it. I think some of you may have to call 914 from time to time. It works, and it has helped a number of persons. This year alone, we received over 15,000 calls on 914 as compared to last year, 12,000 calls. From the Survivors Advocates Program, we have managed to have over 1,200 interventions helping those survivors of gender-based violence. Our Legal Pro Bono initiative, which complements the government subvention to legal aid, providing free legal service to persons experiencing domestic violence, continues and is a collaboration between this ministry and the Guyana Bar Association. Mr. Speaker, we have 500 free cases so that we can at least help 500 persons experiencing violence. Mr. Speaker, I want to read you just a few, and I will leave this with you as the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security is the national coordinating entity for Spotlight in Guyana. It leads in conceptualizing holistic national efforts for preventing and responding to GBV, engages other parts of the government in such national efforts. If there's any distinguishing feature of Spotlight in Guyana, it must be national ownership. At the most recent NSC of the program, the minister committed to incorporating elements of Spotlight into national budgets, noting in particular the preventive community-level activities that address the root causes of violence. We would have established the Community Advocate Network, and we would have trained persons, hundreds of persons, in 8 of 10 regions. Mr. Speaker, this Spotlight initiative worked towards providing support on the draft domestic violence bill, the gender-based violence essential service package for Guyana, the 914 24-hour hotline service, the GBV app, and the Cop Squad initiative. Thank you to the person much maligned just now in a very, anyway, the person, Minister Roseman, thank you for cooperating with this ministry. So together, we would have achieved training of 1,400 plus police officers through the Cop Squad 2000 initiative. Mr. Speaker, the Survivors Advocate program continues to work as it's all across in the courts of Guyana. We also have shelters and a collaboration between the Ministry of Legal Affairs and this ministry will yield the Hope and Justice Centers, where we will provide all the services required for persons experiencing domestic violence under one roof. If this is not something to be proud of, then you're blinkered as usual. Mr. Speaker, I would like to leave you with the final comment from this report. The level of commitment, this is from the UNFPA Spotlight Country Report. The level of commitment of the Minister of Human Services and Social Security and the Ministry of Human Services and Social Security in advancing a holistic approach to addressing gender-based violence in Guyana is exemplary. Spotlight played a catalytic role, which now promises longer-term sustainability thanks to political leadership, sound legal and policy frameworks, and integration of models and services in national mechanisms and budgets, all buttressed by community-level engagement and civil society partnership. Mr. Speaker, I could go on like this for many hours, but I know my time is at an end. I want to say thank you to the people of Guyana for the privilege of serving them. We will continue to service, continue to deliver to the people of Guyana. We do so with humility, and I say to my colleagues, my brothers and sisters on the opposite side of the house, cross the floor, support the budget, because this is only just some of what the 2023 budget promises for the people of Guyana. Transformational, innovative, cross-cutting, and simply spectacular. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I now invite the Honorable Devon Sears to make his contribution.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is a privilege for me to present to this honorable House and the citizens of this great country we call Guyana my contribution to the national budget debate for fiscal 2023. Let me state at the onset that it is my intention to focus my contribution on improving the lives of every Guyanese, to highlight inconsistencies in Budget 2023 and make recommendations which should be considered on its improvement. In areas where I do not go into details, I'm pretty sure my colleagues who are to come will deal with those issues. No responsible person would dispute the fact that indeed this is the largest budget in Guyana's history, a budget that should have catered room for equality, bridging the gaps of poverty, and embody generational wealth. But this budget does not do that, Mr. Speaker. Instead, this budget averts to address the growing economic crisis that Guyanese face on a daily basis. Mr. Speaker, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in the government side of the House, who attempt to convince Guyanese that they care, constantly insulting the Guyanese intelligence and attempting to distract them with chicken feed and, of course, hogwash. Mr. Speaker, there is no substance in their arguments, and constantly they ridicule and criticize our term in government. And also, they give ball-by-ball coverage and what is to happen and who did what and what not. But, Mr. Speaker, might I remind this honorable House that it is the APNU AFC who holds or who have acquired over 50% of votes in the last elections, and who should be sitting on that other side of the House. Might I remind the government that we must exercise political maturity. Every point that is made by my colleagues on this side of the House comes with substance, and we represent the people because they elected us here. The harsh reality is this, Mr. Speaker. When we look at the economy of Guyana, the World Bank, in its recent updated fact sheet on Guyana, it said that Guyanese are living under $5 US every day. That's $1,000. Mr. Speaker, that is unacceptable, especially in an oil-rich economy. Mr. Speaker, it's embarrassing to note that the PPP government have embraced autocracy and also dictatorial governance. That is not what Guyana should represent, Mr. Speaker. It is noted as well that Guyana ranks one of the lowest in terms of living conditions in this part of the world. Mr. Speaker, we have a brain drain situation. A lot of our educated young men and women are seeking employment overseas because the government cannot cater for their qualifications. This oil-rich economy, Mr. Speaker, in order to effectively we must focus on the non-oil sectors, such as tourism. Tourism, it creates jobs, strengthens local economy, contributes to local to conserve the natural environment and cultural equality. This cannot be achieved. And in the ministry, audit the tourism industry, said how we, as compared to 2021, by 85%. He talked about the CPL cricket finals, which is coming to Guyana. But Mr. Speaker, you know what is surprising? That the tourism industry have been performing very well, but yet still, this government decided not to give a proper increase in the budgetary allocation that reflects that growth. Mr. Speaker, that is disappointing. Mr. Speaker, 83.9 increase in tourism from 2021 to 2022 is a big leap. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member boasted about 3,300 rooms that will come on stream because of massive investments. Mr. Speaker, we are the #1 tourist destination, eco-tourist destination, named in 2019, and we hold a solid spot on the global market for sustainable tourism. But yet still, they decided to give the Ministry of Tourism only an increase of 7%, jumping from 2022, $6 billion to 6.5 in 2023. But Mr. Speaker, let's look at what is happening, the breakdown. In terms of the allocation, Mr. Speaker, when you look at program code 234, tourism development and promotion, the allocation is this, Mr. Speaker. $33 million is going to capital work. Mr. Speaker, yeah, you know what that money is going to? A flagpole project at this very center here, the payment of retention and provision for a parking lot and a trestle, all right? Ms. Minister, honorable member, this is not enough when it comes to dealing with tourism, especially if we want to empower people. Mr. Speaker, I want to touch on a few considerations that maybe the government and the honorable member Ashley Singh should take into consideration. Mr. Speaker, the Training and Hospitality School, while it's a good, very good initiative, and it's welcome because we want to elevate tourism within our country. Mr. Speaker, the location might be an issue because if you look at where these huge major investments in hotel and infrastructure is coming from, it's along the coast and Georgetown, Port Morant. I would like to believe that many of their employees to go there, because we will see that the government can consider setting up one in every region so that we can effectively deal with the hospitality sector. Mr. Speaker, the APNU AFC, in its greatest vision to transform this sector, created regional tourism committees with the aim of having greater inclusion and bipartisan cohesiveness geared towards regional development. These committees need funding, Mr. Speaker. I'm speaking about regional tourism committees. Mr. Speaker, no more effectively serve their region, because, Mr. Speaker, we cannot run away from product. With regards to and happening here in Georgetown, these, Mr. Speaker, I'm also to the U.S. State Department, Canada, UK, citizens coming to Guyana. Second, come to the Honorable Member Gale to share one is that investment portfolio so that we can, Mr. Speaker, we did very good is government engage the elected officials doing that. State around that same area, we have this project of position supports that, but my position based on its performance development. I also want to share from Upper Damara Barbies and both sides increase both and the unacceptable employing. Mr. Speaker, when we did
give the facts 150. Look at who's the speaker. Come on, people of in the plight of and the honorable member to give them any reassurance. The time this is to bauxite, but what when those are not being attended to, will to share with you, Mr. Borbies, the villages 3.3 billion billion use parties vote as elected officials of the people. I must say to you that Mackenzie Bridge. Now you've allocated a highway in bridges over that bridge. Not to Mr. Speaker, the government in repairing emergency work at the couldn't the government allocate Mackenzie Bridge? It's because they don't care. Mr. Speaker, listen. Council pushing to have ignored out to the budget. There, that community is the Borough Road. The government Linden the government
Honorable member, I'm an extension.
I move that the honorable member
presentation.
only conclude that some of these lands we're saying we have to invest.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, fortunately, it's not. We have not. That you care about people and would have been given by the honorable member and drainage. Minister Edgell. Mr. Speaker, back, Minister, or the honorable member can be better. Mr. Speaker, construct no drains, culture, the sustainable farming and road from those with soybeans, etc., as a, which will cater for Wairuni and those areas. To go to the Savannah, to Camp Savannah Road, I want to share with you co-op societies. What's happening is that the government fears more, they need to be a strong
member.
one after the unsubstantiated claims are here to this is secret. Everything that we are saying is The honorable member who spoke, just smallest child, that this PPP most the smallest Linden express the question is, we're in office for 5 years. We talk box hundreds of workers because they're got people in London who hung around their necks because they got the government. Our credibility. APNU, AF, but never create house lot. APNU, AFC are calling for people out of work. The police and cronies who said we're going to only give the hours but took the APN but raised tuition by tuition. And racist, but their leader is being the APNU on election. The APNU AFC water and took away the subsidy. Mr. Extremely important make claims and the AFC opposition has no more failed to do. No sound political this budget coming from the opposition. He said said that the PPP. Mr. Speaker, again, country we have had since issued our manifesto programs available. We've been speaking out our vision for Mr. Speaker and new AFC and of their in office hold any senior in government. Now, have no experience government works. The Ashni reading Patient. Budget. For the oil and gas.